Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Welcome to episode 141 of Making It with me, your host, Terry Woolman. I really appreciate you joining us each week, and I'd like to thank Blue Microphones for their technical support in helping continue to bring our show to you during this world health pandemic. Please continue to stay mindful and safe as we all work together as a global community. You can find all of our episodes on entertalkmedia.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or just go to terrywoolman.com/podcast. I hope you find my recent conversations with artists Gino Vanelli, Boney James, Tony Basil, Peter Erskine, Berklee College of Music President Roger Brown, and 90-year-old Auschwitz survivor Rose Schindler inspiring, comforting, and entertaining. Also, be sure to check out our episode featuring the new Netflix documentary Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution, with directors Nicole Newnham and James Lebrecht. The film was executive produced by Barack and Michelle Obama. I created this show to focus on what it takes to create and maintain a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the music and entertainment business. My guest today is Bob James. Let me tell you a little bit about Bob. The career of Bob James is long, varied, and continues to evolve at every turn. From his childhood in Marshall, Missouri to present day, the music of this artist has captivated audiences throughout the world. Discovered by Quincy Jones in 1963, James recorded his first solo album, Bold Conceptions, that year for Mercury Records. 58 albums and worldwide recognition would follow through 5 decades as an award-winning pianist, composer, music director, and producer. While James has established himself as a true original in the jazz world, his music has also had a profound effect on the history of hip-hop. His songs Nautilus and Take Me to Mardi Gras are among the most sampled in hip-hop history. Bob James, welcome to Making It.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Bob.
It's very much a pleasure to in these crazy times.
Well, crazy times they are. You couldn't have said it better. First of all, you are isolated like we are here, my wife and I, but you are really staying away from people, but you're using your time wisely. What have you been up to lately, and how have you been adjusting to the pandemic?
I live in northern Michigan, so I'm kind of away from the worst of the firing line in terms of the crowded big cities. And Michigan has had more than its share of cases, but mostly down in the southern part in the Detroit area. So I feel a little bit more secure up here, but primarily I got my piano, and the piano has been my good friend for my whole career, but it's a much, much better friend right now. Terry, I never liked practicing. From the very, very early days, my mother made me practice, and so I started off in a bad way, thinking that practicing was punishment or something that you just had to do even though you didn't want to do it. And now I just regret so much that I didn't, or I wasn't able to take advantage of that major aspect of making music, practicing. And now, I guess, hopefully before it's too late, I'm playing catch up. And part of it is just the practical reason that I don't have anything else to do. And over the last 2 months, I'm just loving it. At the beginning of the day, I look forward to it, and I'm trying different things with the piano that I never took the time to do. And my life. And the only weird part of it is that I'm doing all of this practicing, but uh, I don't have any concerts to play it on. So it's just most of the time I'm playing for myself, but occasionally I'll have somebody come over and stay 20 feet away from me or whatever. And but other than that, it's just a lot of interaction with my piano.
I had read that you didn't like practicing, and that was part of the reason that you liked jazz, or that there was more freedom for you, in some ways, maybe less disciplined, even though it's an incredibly disciplined area of music. But how did you get to the level of your playing without learning how to really enjoy practicing? Did you just have a natural gift? Were you always just kind of connected to the instrument?
My whole hypothesis or my whole idea back then was just completely wrong. That for some reason or other I did have it in my mind that I wanted to play jazz because you didn't have to practice. Well, that's really silly. And all of the great, don't tell me that Oscar Peterson never practiced or that Keith Jarrett doesn't practice or whatever. Yes, we do to whatever varying degrees. And uh, I guess I would say that I was able to practice on the firing line, which I guess is some form of practicing if you're doing it a lot. Um, and then I can't say that I didn't practice at all. Yes, I did. I just didn't like it. It didn't seem like fun to me, or I didn't understand the power or the fun part of it. That's the thing that I feel is mostly I'm learning right now.
That's so interesting to hear you say that, because one of the things that I've always gotten out of your playing, especially when I see you playing, you seem to be having a lot of fun in playing music. You're a very joyful player. So you definitely didn't lose that aspect of music.
Thank you very much for saying it. And definitely that's very, very important for me. And I like to be able to put across my own personality or my own voice when I'm playing. And I'm the most comfortable when I'm not trying to be somebody else or not trying to do what I think somebody else thinks I should do. If I can be myself, and if something strikes me funny, maybe a deliberate wrong note or some quote from some obscure song or something like that, any of those things at the right time come out in the same way that they would if I was in a social conversation away from the piano. And yes, I love to have fun. And in the live performance, a circumstance where I could feel it coming back at me from the audience, where they get it or appreciate it, that's a dream scenario for me. I love it.
Since you're playing so much music right now and sort of redefining your relationship with the piano, are you able to record at home? Do you have a home studio?
I do. I have an embarrassment of pianos all over the place, and synthesizers and a computer workstation. I don't really have a recording studio as such. I would not be able to record drums or other than maybe one other instrument at a time. I could sort of do it, but I don't have any engineering expertise myself for doing that. So mostly if I'm the things that I'm able to record professionally is if I'm overdubbing my own solo on somebody's project, I can do a pretty good job of making my piano sound as good as it would in a recording.
Well, I'm making a new record. I might circle back and leave some space for you.
Well, I'm telling you, it's the most fun thing going right now is to get asked to play on something and realize that I can take the gig because it's actually going to happen and I don't have to get on an airplane to go to LA to do it.
Right, and you have the time.
Yeah. I wonder if this is a good time to share a story with you that just happened related to that, and I love the idea of sharing it anyway.
Of course.
My friend Dave Kaz, who I'm sure you probably know, Dave, he and I were both asked to do a little virtual at-home video thing for Sandy Shore, who runs the smoothjazz.com website. and I've known Sandy for many years. And she had asked me to do an at-home short thing, just like a 5-minute kind of promo, but playing and talking. So to set up for it, I went to their website, and I noticed that Dave Koz had just done one for her. So I was able to kind of check it out to see how he did his, to see if I could learn anything from it. And on his, he was at his house and sitting on the sofa, just playing the sax, and no band or anything else, very, very casual. And he announced that he had just written this song, a brand new song. And I think maybe he had just written it that morning. So it's really, really hot off the press. And he played it. And I liked it. I thought the melody was pretty cool. So I, in a kind of crazy spur of the moment idea, I transcribed it and decided that I would play it on my video for Sandy Shore. And so I did my at-home thing talking, and I announced that I had written it. And that morning, I didn't say, at the beginning, I didn't say anything about Dave Koz. I just told my viewers that I came up with this melody and hot off the press, and I just couldn't wait to share it. So I played it, and then at the end, I just said, I can't tell a lie. I didn't write that at all. It was written by Dave Koz, and I hope he won't mind if I pretended just a little bit. And it also happened to be April Fool's Day.
Oh, perfect.
That day, so I had a lot of fun, and fortunately, you're taking a little bit of risk that maybe he'll take it the wrong way and not be happy about it. But he loved it, and he got back to me immediately and thanked me, and we laughed about it, and it was great. Well, now that was 2 months ago, or maybe 3 months ago, and time has marched on. He went to the studio to record the official version of this song, and I'm the featured soloist on it. So he invited me to guest on his new record, and it turns out that I scammed my way onto the Dave Koz record.
So lying actually pays off.
Jumping on there. Oh yeah, it totally paid off. And just in terms of what you were asking me about recording things at home or my studio, I did my part here, and so the saga continues.
That's great. I'm going to go listen to the song and the video. And the video that you did for Sandy Shore sounds a lot more interesting than the one that I did for Sandy. I didn't lie about anything or make anything up, but that sounds great. And I actually remember the song because I remember when Dave played it too. I remember the melody. So I'm looking forward to hearing that song.
Yeah, I stole it, but then I couldn't quite pull off. I had to admit.
So before we get into your early years and your career, which has been really pretty remarkable, but also really fun to follow. And just a quick overview, you started playing piano when you were 4 years old, and I want to ask you about that in a minute. I want to talk about something else first. But you've gone on to being a session player, an arranger, producer. You have definitely been pretty fearless and also very creative throughout your whole career in embracing things around you. And it's been really cool to watch and pretty inspiring for me to see that, because it's artists like you and Dave Grusin and Quincy Jones who inspired me to know that I could be more than just a guitar player, like yourself, to become a producer and an arranger and do a podcast, and that it's all connected. So was that something your parents taught you about how everything's connected, or were you just kind of fearless about stepping into any opportunity that was presented to you and somehow managing to not let it compromise your musicianship, but evolve your musicianship?
I don't know. I don't know the answer, but sometimes just the way life evolves creates that. And you can look back on it and realize that you did it, but while you were doing it, you didn't know exactly. I could say that having a college education at the University of Michigan in a really great music school in a very broad environment that wasn't specifically jazz. In fact, there was no jazz department when I went to college there. So I was primarily studying classical music and getting involved with other things, musical theater, and I had an interest or a curiosity about it. And I think going maybe back to some instincts in high school, I liked the idea of arranging or orchestrating, and I was very curious about all of that, the sound, what were the ranges of the instruments, and how did that all happen, and trying to copy it and everything. So that was very much a part of my mindset. And moving to New York, uh, uh, looking for gigs, you never know where that gig is going to come from and whether they might be asking you to do a polka or cha-cha or whatever else. And if you know the basics of it and can deliver it, then you get the job. So I actually think back on a very, very important time that my wife helped me with, because I I became very concerned at some point that I was jack of all trades, master of none. That trying to do too many things and never really focusing in to develop the virtuosity or the high level skills that I lusted for. And there again, this lack of commitment to practicing was part of all of that too. But what my wife told me at that time was essentially, um, that's probably not who you are. You're not the person that is a single focus person, and just be yourself and allow yourself to be all those things because they're coming out naturally. You're gravitating to them for some reason. And yes, okay, maybe you can't be the best of any one of the things that you do, but the fact that you could do a lot of them forms your personality, she told me at that time. And it, it's suddenly I sort of got it. I sort of was able to relax and say it's okay that I do all that, and it's also okay that I'm never going to become Glenn Gould and Vladimir Horowitz and Oscar Peterson and Keith Jarrett and all those other people that I lust after. Not going to be able to do it, but maybe some combination of what I do ends up being special.
You're talking about your wife, Judy, and you and she were married for 53 years. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Can I read a quote that you said about her? Because it really speaks to what you're talking about. Do you mind?
No.
I found it on your website. You had said, she was my best friend, best critic and advisor, the love of my life. Her uncanny ability to understand, appreciate, and get to the basic root values of art made it possible for me to pursue my career. I feel her presence in every note, every gesture.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that speaks to what you just said.
Yeah. And when you're together with somebody for that long, we knew we were going to end up getting married 4 or 5 years before that because we dated all the way through college. So she was with me at the formative times, and I would not even be anywhere close to the only person that would describe her in that way. She had very powerful impact on all of her friends. She was just very straightforward, clear-headed, no bullshit, if you'll excuse the expression, uh, uh, person. And I was the beneficiary of it. So she's been gone a little more than 3 years now, but I still feel her presence all the time, especially when it's anything um, uh, difficult decision or make me pull myself together and not go off course. I try to remember back on the things that did to help keep me on course.
You were lucky to have each other.
I think so. I hope so. I hope she felt the same way.
So there's something else that came to my attention that prompted me reaching out to you this week to have you on the show. Not just the music, but the video that you put out that was entitled Black Lives Matter to Me. And it really touched me. And I know that it's something that was very personal to you because I could feel your heart watching and listening to the video. So I want to talk about it for a moment. And you started the video I wrote it down because, again, it profoundly moved me. And you started it by saying, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter to me. Black Lives Matter a lot to me. I'm a white jazz pianist and composer, and Black lives shape my life. I know what you mean because I know your music history. But can you explain to people that are listening why Black Lives Matter and why you felt compelled to do this? And the video, we're going to put a link to it so everybody can see it, but you just start listing names of people that you love that have impacted you in your life. I've been at a loss as a white person, as a musician as well. My wife is Black, so I'm very immersed in information that's going on every day, and I felt inadequate in what to say. At points, I've had moments of clarity where I speak, but where did your clarity come from to do that?
Well, this kind of a interview is the thing that I was the most nervous about and maybe terrified about because I don't feel I'm qualified to be a spokesman by any means. I'm not a crusader. I'm not the little video I made, very spur of the moment, very much. It came to me before I went to bed this one night. I was kind of thinking that I'm way away from, I'm seeing these demonstrations going on in all different cities and places that I used to live and work in New York and LA. But now I'm away from it. I'm not doing anything and I'm feeling out of it and almost as if I was hiding, not deliberately, but just, I don't know, feeling an obligation, but also kind of helpless. What the heck can I do? I can't really do anything. But as this started to unfold, I maybe Judy, my wife, was doing it for me. She was much closer to the theater than I was, and our best friend Jack O'Brien, who lives in New York, is a Broadway director. And he was guiding me, even though I didn't talk to him. I didn't call him to ask him anything about it, but I was channeling them, my theater best friends in my life, who I got to see how they deliver lines, deliver themselves in a kind of theatrical situation. I mean, not that I was acting exactly, but I wanted to get my point across clearly, simply, didn't want to preach. I just wanted to say it. So I felt that the more direct that I could be, I better write it out because we know in this delicate time that we're in, one word that you say in the wrong way can send it totally off in the wrong direction. And I was desperately trying, and I tested myself out with my little script before I actually hit the record button. But we know enough in our music field with that take one that if you get take one right, then you're probably never going to get it any better than that. And the way my script was going, if I'd made a mistake on the 60th name that I was trying to think on there and had to start all over again, it would not work. So I did one take only, and I stumbled on one name toward the end. I figured I probably would anyway because I was getting so nervous by that time. And then I just sent it off. Didn't think too much more about it, but I was definitely nervous seeing how many things get misinterpreted and overinterpreted and deliberately misinterpreted. So, but after I really started thinking about it, it was too late. It was out there, and I started to kind of realize that it was going to get more attention than any of my noodling around at the piano was getting. But I can say, Terry, uh, no bad reactions have come in,
Good.
either by text or so many of my friends called me and thanked me and gave me the good feeling that they knew where my heart was and what I wanted to say. And I only explained very briefly about the white guy in the black jazz world, but I wanted to make that understood that there is this, which we even used to call reverse prejudice, that goes on, where that there were some black musicians that kind of didn't want me in, or didn't want any of the white guys in there. And that was my learning process during that whole period of time, and I learned so much, among other things, that the better the musician was, the less problem that there was, because they were hearing music, not any other kind of agenda. And what I basically had to do was play the music, and if I could really play it, I got in. And if I wasn't cutting it, I wouldn't get in. So I just said that stuff a little bit because, again, I did not want to preach. I didn't want to do anything like that. But I wanted just to have people realize that I was talking about my life, a white guy's life, but I lived my life in the black community. And the bulk of my fans, my most loyal fans, and the very high percentage of the musicians that I played with and been friends with for my whole life were much more in the black community than they were in the white community. And it remains that way to this day. Um, so that's what I did.
I wonder if that's part of the reason that your video spoke to me so deeply, because that's been my experience as well. My mentors are Joe Sample and Abraham Laboriel Sr., the people that have deeply touched my life and helped form me, not just as a musician, but also just in being a better person.
Yeah. And I think we have the best chance of influencing in some way other white people who may have that prejudice that's built in on whatever level that it's in there, that they may not even know that it's in there. And if we are not afraid to talk about it, and not afraid to represent ourselves as representatives of being able to say that Black Lives Matter to us, then at the very least, they have to take us seriously about it.
Well, thank you for being courageous enough to speak your heart and put the video out. And I'm glad nobody got hurt, because I think it's important to speak out. And it's nobody's job right now, black or white, to feel the weight of thinking that they need to be the spokesperson for everything. It's just speaking what's personally, your personal truth and perspective.
And for us, just do it one person at a time. Be a good representative of how that is. There's things like just the movement, Black Lives Matter movement, the three words have conjured up a whole bunch of complicated and weird debate stuff that, well, the people that will say all lives matter. And then now you're an hour into a completely, maybe even loony conversation that's not even worth trying to explain the difference and why that's not a good answer when I'm trying to tell you that these black people meant my whole life, and that was my life, and it mattered.
Right.
And well, sure, all other lives matter, but that's not really the point, is it? No, it's not. So anyway, we don't have to beat up on it. Thank you for bringing it up, because I know that I'm going to probably regularly be asked about it.
You're welcome, Bob. I wanted people to understand the bigger picture of what your background was and why it made perfect sense for you to do that. So thanks for sharing a little bit more of your backstory on that so that people really get the intention and understand why it's perfectly the right thing to do at the right time.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, you're welcome. Quincy Jones was very influential in your career. From what I understand, he helped you get your start, basically put you to kind of the front of the line when he heard you play at a festival. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of an understatement that he helped my career because he was very pivotal at a number of different really important times. That first one being the College Jazz Festival that I was performing in, and he was one of the judges. So that was major in many, many ways. It was one of the reasons why I got enough confidence to move to New York after that and totally pursue my career. Um, but I was lucky timing, very, very lucky timing, because it was the beginning of his career also. And as his career skyrocketed, the fact that I was a little bit on the ground floor with him and had made an impression on him and a friendship with him that has lasted throughout my whole career. And um, we all like to have some kind of badge, you know. I don't think I would have actually worn a Quincy Jones badge on my shirt, but I would maybe come close to that. Just because that gets you in the door very often. And there were a lot of other people that I would have wanted to put their name as a badge too, Sarah Vaughan, et cetera, et cetera.
What was it like, Bob, moving to New York at that point? Was it a lot different than now? Did you just go there and based on your talent and the confidence that you got from your getting to know Quincy, did you just start doing sessions and playing in clubs and getting arranging work? Or did you have to drive a cab for a year? What was your first year like in New York?
Well, you brought up my wife, Judy. Thank you for bringing that up because it gives me the opportunity to explain about our move to New York because we moved right after we got married. And almost immediately after our honeymoon, we moved. And it's amazing to me to this day, and I still cannot quite figure out why she put up with it. But both of us had master's degrees, and we had very, very solid education. But I had no job and no inkling that there were going to be any jobs. I don't even remember why I got up the courage or the craziness for us to get in our car and move and get an apartment. And I wasn't even looking for a job. I was very involved with avant-garde music at that time. And I had a little bit of notoriety. And I had my little Quincy Jones encounter and all that at a college event. But this was New York City. And then there were plenty of other people much further down the line that would be getting whatever few jobs there were in jazz. There weren't that many, maybe half a dozen clubs. And I wasn't going to be one of the ones who was going to get the job. It would certainly be Bill Evans, or it would be on and on and on. Where I was on that list was way, 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 way down. But Terry, I wasn't thinking about it. I was listening to a lot of avant-garde music, and my wife taught school. She got a job because she had a teaching degree, and she ended up getting a teaching job up in Harlem. And took a bus to get up there, the subway, and then got off the subway and got on the bus. And 145th Street was where her school was that she was teaching. And for pretty much at least the first year that we were in New York, my contribution to our budget was nearly zero. And I'm embarrassed to even admit it after all this time, because eventually I did a little bit better than that in later years. But she stuck with me. It was her patience or something. I don't know. And we were naive, and we liked New York, and I had a little bit of a little bit of financial backing from my father still at that time. So we weren't trying to go to New York broke and desperate to get something happening. But it was a very naive and very adventurous decision to move. Nothing like thinking that I was going to be getting gigs or recording gigs or any of that. Fortunately, came later, but what I consider my first actual job where I got a little bit of predictable money was with Sarah Vaughan, and that was about 2.5, 3 years after we'd been in New York. And I had very few other actual pay jobs before that. I did work for 6 months with Maynard Ferguson, and as his pianist with his band. But touring, the little bit of touring that we did, there was no money involved, and there was a lot of chemicals going on within the band that I didn't approve of and didn't want to go that path. So I pulled away from that, and it had one big highlight that also influenced my life a lot was the fact that we played Birdland in New York, one of our gigs, which was the old 52nd Street Birdland. They moved there in different locations years, but at that time it was the original one. And into the club came Sarah Vaughan, and Maynard knew her and asked her to sit in. And of course, in that situation, the pianist usually panics because, of course, she didn't come in with any arrangements, so there was nothing for the big band to do to play behind her. But you know that the pianist is going to get the task to play, and so when she walked over to the piano, already hoping that she would want to sing something simple, Misty or something that I knew. Mm-hmm. And she came over to the piano and said, "Do you know the sweetest sound?" Which was at that time very, very obscure thing for a singer to ask because it was a brand new song that had just opened Broadway, the No Strings, a musical that starred Diane Carroll. And Sarah had been in the studio to record it, or she knew it, and she was in the middle of working on it. So miraculously, very, very good luck was with me because I was able to say, well, yes, what key? What key do you want to do it in? And so, with vibrato, I made it sound like there was no big deal, that I probably knew every song that you could make. But it was just luck.
Right.
Again, my two friends who were in musical theater had hooked me up because I was listening much more to musical theater than a normal jazz guy was playing with Maynard Ferguson. And so I knew it, and I was okay with the key that she chose, and I played reasonably good job of doing it for her. And it was less than maybe 6 months after that, a few months after that, when her pianist, Ron Albright, who was playing with her at the time, decided to leave. And Maynard had given me the opportunity to have a much better audition than I would have ever gotten.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I got the job with her as a result of it.
Did having perfect pitch help you through that experience as well? Or was it pretty much just because you had been getting exposed to Broadway and theater music?
Perfect pitch was a very, very big help to me in all kinds of ways, arranger and whatever, but we don't probably want to go into the other side of that too much, but I am on the other side of the pitch phenomenon now because I don't have it anymore. In fact, it's even in my older age, and I have talked to a couple of other older musician friends who had perfect pitch who are having a similar thing that I had, which is it's kind of worse than no perfect pitch because I still hear all those notes in my head, but they're wrong. They're now it started out being somewhere in the vicinity of a half tone wrong. Now I'm as much as a whole tone high. And I have to go through a whole thing to pull myself back. If I'm playing the piano and if I'm oriented, my fingers are telling me where I am, and now I'm fine. But if I'm just listening to something else, my brain is telling me so strongly that it's these other notes based on this long history of knowing it was those notes. I was bulletproof 40 years ago. I could hear clusters and everything else, and it helped me with my arranging. But now I better have a piano next to me to get me back on track if I'm trying to transcribe or anything else, because I don't have it.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that perfect pitch could change with age. I have plenty of friends, mutual friends of ours, Nathan East, Gerald Albright. We've always had fun on stage playing together with, testing each other, and I don't have it. I've got relative pitch, but I also know that it can be quite a distraction for a lot of people for many, many reasons. I wanted to ask you, when you're talking about the Sarah Vaughan opportunity, I remember reading about I believe your very first gig, you were 8 years old and you played for a tap dance company. Is that accurate?
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember. I remember I got fired, though.
Well, that might speak to the question that I'm getting ready to ask you, which is, how did that very first gig prepare you for other things that have come along your way in your career? And I would imagine getting fired would be a good example of what you needed to learn to be ready to be in the music business.
Yeah, and having chosen jazz, the fact that I got fired for not being able to keep the beat was a very big part of it. And I learned that I better learn a little bit of something about rhythm. The rhythm could be important to me and has continued to be extremely important to keep the beat. Otherwise, in jazz, you definitely get fired.
How did you, and at what point, especially since you were working in avant-garde jazz when you first moved to New York, how did you become a pocket player, like such a strong groove player? How'd you get good at that?
I think I must have, at most of the steps along the way, I must have gotten associated with the right kind of players that it was very important that if I wasn't getting it, they would remind me about it, or one way or another, it would become more and more and more obvious that you better be in the pocket or you're out of a job or you're not going to be able to play. And I started feeling it, and I started hearing it in other players. I can share with you some new project that I'm very much lucky that it's happening right now. There's an engineer who lives in LA. You may know him, George Clavin. You know who that is?
No, I don't know George. Just by name.
George Clavin. Well, he has a couple of different labels. He's an engineer that went into producing recordings, and in recent years he has done a lot of reissues of classic old recordings that he was able to get the rights to reissue them. And a few years ago, he reissued a compilation project of recordings of Eric Dolphy. And coincidentally, I was involved with Eric Dolphy briefly back in my college days, having invited him to come out and play on one of my avant-garde pieces that I had composed when I was in college. And one of those pieces ended up on this recording. But in addition to that, he contacted me some months ago to tell me that he still had in his possession these two recordings that I made in 1965 in New York, that he had asked my trio to come in to this studio, or it was actually a theater up at Columbia University in New York City, and play, because he wanted to test out his equipment. It was not a paid gig or anything. He just said, you guys can play whatever you want from your repertoire. And at that time, as I was telling you a lot of the stuff that I was doing was in the fringe of the avant-garde. But we were also playing bebop too. Uh, and so there are a series of recordings, and he told me they're in pristine condition, still audio great, and he wanted to put them out. And it's actually going to happen. The album has a name, Once Upon a Time, and it's two different sessions from 1965, my trio. And amazing that after more than 50 years, have the opportunity to have them see the light of day. Because I totally forgot. I had no idea that they were even in existence. I hadn't kept copies of them or anything. And it was only 6 months ago when he told me that he had them, and they're going to come out. And I like having the opportunity to mention it to you now, because it's a very, very different side of my playing. About 50% of it is straight ahead bop kind of playing, and then the other 50% is the more crazy avant-garde stuff. And two different drummers, one of whom in particular was a guy named Omar Clay, and I wanted to mention him. I did mention him, by the way, in my Black Lives Matter thing. I went all the way back to my Ann Arbor days. The first 2 or 3 people that I mentioned were those guys that literally formed the foundation of me hearing what swing meant and trying to figure out how I could get into the middle of it without ruining the groove. Could I stay in the groove? And Omar was a just fantastic, amazing pocket swing player. And he's the guy that I probably remember the most as being my first opportunity to sit there at the piano and feel like I'm floating on a cloud or something. Oh my God, what's happening to me? But the notes, when I relaxed enough, the notes just seemed to completely flow in this way, like he had me hypnotized or something. That kind of feeling. And yes, that stayed with me my whole life. I knew that somewhere inside me, I had something that probably can't practice to get that. You just have to have it.
This is so fantastic. I'm really excited to hear these new records. When are they coming out?
I'm maybe end of summer now. I'm thinking maybe putting it off till September. All these schedules are getting changed because of the virus. And they have another different record with Eddie Daniels that's coming out at the end of this month that I also played on and wrote a couple of arrangements for that too. But he's a really, really interesting guy. And just the fact that he's given me this opportunity to go back way back into my archives and have the opportunity to have a hard bop 1965 record come out.
That's so great, Bob. Man, I can't wait to hear it.
Hey, Terry, they had the opportunity to ask him, George Clayman, about this. But I just learned from a young friend who's barely 20 years old, I think. And he's telling me, maybe you know about this. I was so shocked. According to him, the latest trend in recordings, cassette. And he's involved in this kind of real out electronic music stuff. And he just released his new record, cassette format. I couldn't believe my ears. I couldn't believe that he was saying this to me. But he's manufactured it, and he's selling them over in Europe. And he said he's already sold out his whole first edition, and it's hot now.
I'm speechless.
Have you heard about this?
No, but I'm absolutely speechless, and I don't.
There was nothing good about that format.
No.
At least with vinyl, it sounded good if you said the right thing. But even that shocked me that vinyl would come back. But no, he's at the beginning of his thing,
wow.
And he's in this pretty out music that he plays. But their new thing is that they're releasing it on cassette.
I could. Wow, maybe we should put out our next records on 8-track. Jump ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And I'm going to look at my garage because I think I still got some boxes there. Like you said, they might have a
I
lot.
do. Yeah. I could ask Raul Campos from KCRW because he's definitely an audiophile. He's always cutting edge. I've had him on the show, but he's a KCRW DJ in Los Angeles. I'll find out. I'll see what he knows because he's been pushing me to release on vinyl again. And that makes sense. I understand that from the audiophile aspect, but cassette makes zero sense to me.
Other than sort of crazy trendiness and silliness, which I guess that is, because where are they going to get a player that will play it? And even if they do, it's not going to sound.
Oh man, I do not miss that sound. Just that's hysterical.
Who knows?
That's really funny. Before we get to our closing questions, there's a couple things that I want to ask you. One of many of my favorite songs of yours that you've written or co-written is your collaboration with Kenny Loggins, Celebrate Me Home. And I was curious what that writing session was like. Did you walk in with an idea or a book of ideas, or did you just show up and that's what happened?
Well, I was producing that record for him. It was when I was at Columbia, and it was his first departure from Loggins and Messina, going off to do his own thing. And he had told the people at Columbia before I even met him that he was interested in bringing a little bit of jazz influence into his work. And that's how we met. I guess I got recommended to him, not exactly sure how that happened. But immediately, I want to say that although I would love to take as much credit as I possibly could take for Celebrate Me Home song, like I tried quickly to do
with our friend Dave, right?
Then I realized
I see the pattern.
Right. So it might have been a little bit that way with Kenny Loggins too, where I just tried to pretend that I wrote it. But the bottom line of that was Kenny was very much gentleman and allowed me to share in the credit for that song because he had basically written it, and I was helping him with some ideas about the bridge, right, the middle section, and some chords. That was my contribution, and even when I play it or listen back to it now, I can't even remember much that I did. His song pretty much existed on its own, and he was just really nice. Maybe you shouldn't, if you're going to be talking to him.
I won't bring it up. No.
I do like having a little writer's share of that
yeah,
song.
we don't want to revert it.
I brag about it all the time.
He's not scheduled for the show, so you're safe. It's so interesting to me because, well, as a producer and arranger, as well as piano player, the line often blurs. When you are collaborating, it's a very intimate experience when done right to make the kind of albums that you've been making. You just sit down and share ideas. You help form ideas. And sometimes the producer idea or the arranger idea carries over into the composition idea. It's not common that people get credited for that. So the word gentleman is a really good choice of words for that he was gracious enough to acknowledge your contribution, even if it didn't start out that way.
He and I never talked about it, or at least I don't remember talking about it, but it may have been when he was feeling a block, knowing that it had potential to be good, but somehow or other I helped him through that block, or I fixed a note or I fixed a chord to say, try this. And it freed him up to take it to the finish line. And as a result of that, even though the melody wasn't mine or the basic part of it wasn't mine, he felt better acknowledging that. And of course, maybe he also didn't know what a big hit was going to become. Maybe if he realized how big it would become, he might have wanted to take a little bigger slice.
Yeah,
of it.
possibly. Know. That wouldn't surprise me. But, you mentioned the word vulnerable. What's the importance of vulnerability as an artist, as a musician, as a producer to you? Why do you think that's important? I think it's extremely important. But can you elaborate on that, what I consider a quality?
Well, being vulnerable is also being um, uh, potentially honest, being willing to uh, let go of, of, of defenses and of blocks or of covering that you might do. And the closer that you can get to revealing yourself in the most vulnerable sense, I think you get at the passion, you get at that mystery place that you can make people fall in love with what you do, because they feel that, they hear it, and they may not know exactly why they hear it, but I believe we can feel it in other people's music when that happens, when they are at their most vulnerable, and uh, that's getting deeper in there where the beauty
Mm-hmm.
is. I think
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't always do it because a lot of times I like to protect, and a lot of times I'm not willing to be completely vulnerable. Uh, but I think if I'm all, that's what I aim for all the time, is to get as close as I can to myself. To, this is the way I hear something, and have the courage to let it out, to let go of it.
What is it that you're protecting when you're feeling like you don't want to be vulnerable or don't allow yourself to be?
Failure, against that vulnerability of opening up, even if you do fail, or even if people hate it or don't like it, or if it's bad or it's not good. There's a lot of ways to be safe, and there are a lot of in the music field or in any field. If you're more conservative and more safe and stay closer to the middle of the pack or whatever, then you may not get the great good results, but you may not get the horrible bad results either. So there's that. That's the place where if you choose to go that way, you're making yourself less vulnerable. So the way I'm trying to use that word vulnerable relates to uh, having the courage to fail, and with the hope that having that courage also makes it opportunity to succeed. My friend Eddie Daniels helped me with a term. He meditates a lot, and he was using the word surrender, related to this kind of topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I love
I
that
do too.
word. I wouldn't have used it otherwise, but that's an even better word than
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, that you just surrender.
It is a great word. Yeah, really, really captures the essence of what you're talking about. You know, I think my observation is you certainly have been courageous in your career. At least it seems from your library of work that you've put out, including 3 classical albums, your earlier jazz work. You did a Star Wars thing that was a big hit earlier in your career, arrangement. The Roberta Flack song that you recorded on the original version and then did your own version a few weeks later that also got radio play. Your duets, I think you have 2 collaborations with your daughter. You've definitely stayed a moving target. And also, of course, foreplay. I'd be remiss to not mention 2 things that are really prominent in your career. Foreplay, one of the best bands in our genre of music, and also your collaboration, in a sense, in the hip hop world with your music. Those are 2 things that don't seem to be, fit in the same sentence, but they absolutely do with you.
Well, so we're talking about a lot of stuff, and it is a byproduct of age. So if you hang around long enough, one way or another, you do a lot of stuff, and some of them are highlights, and hopefully people forget about the lowlights part. So yes, I've had a long time doing it, and I have a lot of those kind of highlights. Very happy that it happened, but so many of them, when I start to zero in on them, those things that became highlights are the most to me, random fluke, luck,
Right.
weird, didn't plan it. The things that became the most successful were not what I would have predicted if I had to lay out some strategy to say this is going to be successful. And maybe the most dramatically crazy one was the hip hop
Right.
world.
Absolutely.
But I never had anything to do with it. I still don't know what to do with it. Why they chose me, I have no idea. Uh, and am I unhappy about it? No, I'm for the most part very happy. Occasionally, I get chosen to have my music be involved in some recordings that go down a profanity path that I wouldn't necessarily want to be associated
Hmm.
with, or that stuff like that. But for the most part, uh, it's given me opportunity to have young people talk to me and have a kind of respect or admiration for the way we did things back in the olden days
Hmm.
before before scratching happened and before looping happened and before all of this stuff. Um, I, I don't know, but that definitely is a great example of the the good aspect of doing a lot of
Hmm.
stuff, doing a wide variety of stuff. We talked about it early on, and I did have a chance to do a lot of that. And my wife told me, keep doing it, keep doing a whole lot of stuff, because you never know when you pull that machine in Las Vegas and it comes up three cherries or whatever
Right.
it is. Hey, you hit it on that one. You don't know why, but
Well, like you said, there's a lot of happenstance and luck, and it's not that you didn't have a plan, but for me as well as you, like I'm reminded most of the amazing things that have happened in my career, the biggest things have happened because I was just open to something coming through a side door, or there was a little bit of a fluke factor that I said yes to, even if it wasn't exactly how I envisioned it. I turned it into something, or it became something bigger. And I think it's kind of
yeah.
a really good way to go through life. It certainly has served you and continues to.
I can think back in college and people that were giving me advice or the kind of strategy that I can remember thinking about even when I first moved to New York. Uh, um, the basic thought process was you will get a break. And whenever people say to me or anybody that they can't get a break, they just can't get a break, it's kind of the wrong way to look at things, because somehow or other, I firmly believe that everybody has that moment or that break or that something. And it is what you grab and take and are able to take by being prepared in life to hit it and nail it when your break happens. But if you're not prepared, if you're not taking care of all the rest of your life and you're practicing and you're staying clean and healthy and everything else, that's the place where we have the opportunity to have a much better chance of utilizing and taking advantage of that break that happens and not blow it.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. I couldn't agree more. I could go all day with you, but I would say, why don't I get to our closing questions right now? Since the show is called Making It, what does making it mean to you, both personally and professionally? And also, can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
Yeah, I think we were hitting at it. That one of the tips would definitely be prepared, be good, be as good as you could possibly be, so that when you get your chance, your break, your whatever, that you can give it your best, and don't just think that any of those things are going to happen automatically. Bass player that I loved for so many years, who was also one of the names in my Black Lives Matter list, Gary King. Uh, he he always referred to as being humble, and so that that idea of of not taking yourself too seriously, not um, just keep yourself in perspective and be humble. Always very important. And third tip, don't pay any attention to Bob Jones. He doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. He's just been lucky his whole life. That's probably the best tip I can give anybody.
Duly noted. Bob, so what does making it mean to you both personally and professionally?
Having the opportunity to enjoy this wonderful process of making music. The process of doing it, to me, has always been and will always be more important than making it. Making it, yes, is the livelihood part. I'm proud of that I've had music as my own professional way of having a livelihood, and I've been able to get paid well enough that I've had a comfortable, nice life and supported my family. So making it in that way has been important. But the the idea of making it the way I see some young people go off the track is by having the wrong outlook or wrong dream of seeing somebody else. They're not seeing themselves, so I want to be famous for whatever that means, and doesn't is very unlikely to lead to that fame if they're having that kind of mindset. And the most reliable thing that stays with you always is if you love the process of what you're doing. Because that way, it can't take that away from you. If it doesn't, if what you're doing doesn't sell millions, or it doesn't make you famous, or whatever, you still had the pleasure of just doing it in that process. And for me, being able to do that, have that be my life, is great. Wouldn't trade it for anything. I still love it, whether I get paid for it or not, or even whether anybody listens to it or not. Now I can be here in my room all day. Nobody's here except the squirrels, and I still love it.
Yeah, the process. Beautifully said. One of the biggest gifts for me in the way music has touched me is the actual creative process.
Yeah, and the most wonderful and powerful and fascinating and never-ending adventure and challenge and all of it.
I'm going to give you last words, but my final question before that is, at this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, following up on our theme, I would tell a younger self to practice more at that age, because that's the time when all your habits get formed, and any good habits or any virtuoso technique or skills or things. That's when your mind is at the most fresh, and habits. The lazy habits or the flaws are also established during that time period too. So how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Bob, any closing thoughts, final words, anything on your heart or your mind that you want to share to close this conversation off with?
Sure. I very much enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you a little bit through this interview. I very much appreciated your, I know you did some background research, and I felt very comfortable having this conversation, and I hope we meet in person soon. I hope I have the opportunity to come back to LA in a non-pandemic way.
I look forward to that. And I want to thank you for your time, for spending the hour plus with me and our listeners. And please continue to stay safe and inspired in everything that you're doing, Bob. Thank you.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woolman.